Let's now turn to the subject of Syria because, of course, the Geneva II peace talks are continuing in Montreux. In fact, the president of the opposition Syrian National Coalition has just been speaking in Geneva. Ahmad Jarba said the Assad regime had a version of events about Syria that were out of touch with reality.
We are now all convinced, the whole world is convinced, that al-Assad should not stay and should leave power. And we've already started to look into the future of Syria, which is free, prosperous and developed, which is going to see a period without weapons, a hope that's going to be met by future generations. We are convinced, and the whole world is convinced, that the al-Assad regime is now a part of the past.
And Al Jazeera Zeina Khodr joins us live from Geneva, having listened in to what Mr. Jarba had to say a little earlier. And what else did he point out in this address?
Well, yes, Ahmad Jarba saying that the international community believes that the regime is no longer legitimate, and in his words, it's already dead and it should be buried. Well, of course, the regime, will disagree with that. The regime is very confident, and really the reality on the ground is quite different. The regime still has the upper hand militarily. We heard Ahmad Jarba call on the international community to help them fight what he called a terrorist regime. What he tried to do really was reiterate that it's the regime responsible for the bloodshed, because what the Syrian government has been trying to do is change the focus of this conference and to focus on the war against terrorism instead of the Geneva I communique, which calls for setting up a transitional government with full executive powers. We heard the Syrian UN ambassador yesterday give a lengthy press conference, and he was accusing regional countries of supporting terrorist groups, and he said that we do agree to Geneva I, but as a whole package, and a whole package actually means, in his words, that they need to end the violence and need to end terrorism. So two very conflicting agendas, clearly very little common ground between the warring parties, but nevertheless the first direct talks between Syria's warring sides will start tomorrow in Geneva.
And what can we actually expect out of those talks? They are supposed to be face-to-face. There has been some suspicions that, in fact, the face-to-face discussions might not actually take place on Friday.
What we understand is that the delegations will not be holding direct talks. Ahmad Jarba, the UN envoy, will be shuttling between the two delegations. This is going to be a very difficult and long process, but Syrian government sources have told Al Jazeera that the talks will last until next Thursday, and on Friday a communique will be issued. Whether or not there is an outcome, whether or not they achieved anything, talks will then be suspended for some time and then resume. What we are not expecting is a political deal to end the war, but what we understand from statements from Ahmad Jarba and other diplomats is what they're going to try to do is ease the plight of the Syrian people, maybe reach deals like a local ceasefire, humanitarian access for aid agencies to reach besieged areas. But again, from government sources, what we do know is that the regime will only accept the creation of humanitarian corridors if the whole process is under its supervision. The regime will also not accept a full ceasefire. What they may agree to is certain security arrangements in some areas. So really, steps to ease the plight of civilians, this is what we are expecting from Geneva, but it's a long way off before they sign any political agreement.
Zeina Khodr in Geneva. Thanks very much indeed.